Welcome to Caregiver SOS On Air, presented by the WellMed Charitable Foundation, with nationally known gerontologist Carol Zernail and award-winning veteran broadcaster Ron Aaron. This program provides health, wellness, and other information for caregivers who are vital to the health and well-being of so many people across our country. And now, here are your hosts, Ron Aaron and Carol Zernail.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. I'm Ron Aaron. Caregiver SOS On Air comes to you every week with a look at a variety of issues that affect caregiving and their care recipients. We talk about health and wellness and welfare and mental health issues as well. Carol Zernail, our co-host, is with us. We're delighted to have her on board. Carol has a master's degree in social gerontology, 30-plus years experience in the field. She's the co-chair of the Raise Family Caregiving Advisory Council and executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And Carol, it is great to be with you.
Well, it's always nice to be with you, Ron.
One of the things we're going to talk about with our guest today is Sustainable Caregiving Strategies, how to make it work. And you have a lot of experience with that.
Well, we all do, but I love that term sustainable. Now, that's a word that we don't usually hear applied to caregiving, but it's so true.
Well, we're going to introduce our guest, and we'll jump off and let you know that Theresa Wilbanks is with us. Theresa is a caregiving advocate, an author, and founder of Sustainable Caregiving. It's a movement dedicated to helping caregivers navigate the emotional, physical, and logistical challenges of caregiving without burning out, and that is indeed a challenge. She cared for her dad, and we'll talk about that in just a couple of moments. Her book, Navigating the Caregiver River, A Journey to Sustainable Caregiving, and the forthcoming 12 Sustainable Caregiving Strategies, both are in practical tools, deep empathy, and hard-won wisdom, and we're delighted to have you with us. Theresa, welcome to Caregiver SOS On Air.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Hi, Carol.
Hello.
Share with us, if you will, your experience in caring for your dad, how that came about, and what that experience taught you about yourself.
Yeah, so it's interesting that I watched my parents care for their parents, but had no idea what it involved. Kind of saw the surface, and they managed it so well, seemingly. So when my husband and I were living in France, we'd been there for 7 years. Dad was 93 at the time, I guess. And he was taking care of himself pretty well, still driving and managing getting by. But, I would talk to him every 3 days. And after one conversation, he shared a fire that had happened, and he downplayed it, but little by little, more and more came out. And it was pretty significant. And we decided an ocean away was too far away. We needed to be home and closer. And so we made the arrangements to move from France back to the U.S. to Florida, where he was. It was a good thing that we did, because soon after, within, I would say 6 months, he had a stroke. And while he recovered fully, he could no longer drive. And so he wasn't necessarily at that point suffering from any disease per se, but just the aging process was taking a toll, his decisions. And I say he was no longer able to drive. Those weren't his beliefs. He kept driving. And he had so many keys hidden. We couldn't sell the car because we had caregivers helping with it. This happened, of course, over a period of maybe a year. And it was traumatic. And so before I knew it, I was helping out when I got back, and it felt good, and helping him with errands and going to doctor's appointments. But then all of a sudden I was completely overwhelmed, felt like I was drowning, didn't think I would survive the experience. He's not in his 90s, and I thought he was going to outlive me at this point. And that's when I realized that, his mom lived to be 104, and I wouldn't make it if he lived to be 104, and I had to do something different. And so just delved into, why is this so hard? And it just is. And what are the pain points? How can I tackle each one of them? And that's how the Sustainable Caregiving Strategies came to be. And it was just through trial, error, tears, a lot of reflection. But yeah, caring for Dad was quite the journey. And I learned a lot of lessons from him through it. So,
what were some of your biggest challenges in caring for him?
Well, to be perfectly honest, and like most of us, we didn't expect to be in this place on this journey, caring for someone. And I had imagined my 50s to look quite different. And so there was a lot of adjustment that I had to do in terms of this is where I need to be and what I need to be doing. But that did not come easy. So I would say, and this is what became the strategies, but accepting the role. That was really hard for me. And I didn't think I was resisting, but I clearly wanted to be somewhere else, not there, and not there for an indefinite period of time, because I did not know how long this would last. And so that was definitely one of the adjustments. And Dad, I felt like we were helping. He didn't see it that way. He really was holding on to his independence, his dignity. I was battling for his safety and security, and it was a battle. Like, it was a conflict, a constant conflict, until I realized what was happening. I realized my ego was involved. My fear was involved. I really had to break that down to see that he didn't want the help because he felt like that meant he needed help. I mean, there was just a lot going on that we had to unpack so I could help him maintain his dignity. And eventually he accepted help. I first had to accept help. Like, there was so much going on that I really had to adjust my thinking and just way of approaching everything.
We'll continue the story in a moment, but I want to let folks know who may have just joined us. You're listening to the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. We come to you every week with a variety of stories and issues that involve caregiving and care recipients. I'm Ron Aaron. Our co-host Carol Zernail is with us. And our special guest today, Theresa Wilbanks. We're talking with her about her discovery, really, of what sustainable caregiving strategies are all about. And she learned it the hard way, firsthand, caring for her dad. When you said he wasn't particularly thrilled with you stepping in, looking for independence, and Carol, you want to pick it up from there?
Well, what I heard you say, Theresa, that I think you just really encapsulated what we as caregivers often have to juggle, is that idea of safety versus that quality of life. And so if we as caregivers had our way, we would make sure everything was locked down, everything was safe. And so we are all pretty risk averse, and that's a tough one. It's a tough one to accept any amount of risk when it comes to your father who's in his 90s.
Yes, and I will tell you, for an example, like, dignity of risk is something I had to learn about. But so Dad wanted to jump out of a plane for his 94th birthday, and when he would say it, I was triggered. I thought he was just doing it he knew how to trigger me. He knew he loved my reactions, so I felt like that's what it was about. But then he said it in front of his doctor, the primary care physician, and the doctor said, well, why not? And that really flipped a switch in me. I'm like, okay, why not? Why have I been resisting? What's this fuss all about? So we got back home, and I'm like, Dad, if you want to jump out of a plane, I'll help you. And so we found someone where he would jump with him. They worked with veterans, and this was something they just did, and they had no problem jumping out with a 94-year-old. Now, my fears, I had to set them aside and trust. My family and friends were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I'm on team Dad now. We're doing this. So this was a lesson. And we got there. I would say we got there. The winds got up. He couldn't jump. The whole way there, he's like, I'm not jumping. I'm like, oh, yes, you are. But I'm like, I battled this for 6 months. We're going. And I wasn't going to make him jump. But I just learned such a big lesson. He wasn't suffering a little bit of cognitive decline, but he was still able to make his own decisions. If this is something he wanted to do, I really needed to support it. This was a huge shift. It's medication management. There are battles that driving, so ladders, so many battles. But this is something I could support him in. It was hard, but it was a good lesson for both of us. He learned that I was going to support him, and maybe he shouldn't insist on something he doesn't really want to do.
So he never made the jump.
He didn't. The winds got up. He was given the option to wait, or to get a credit, or get a refund. And he said refund. I was okay with that.
Well, the late President Bush jumped when he was 90, as I recall.
He did. He was an experienced
person in terms of jumping out of airplanes.
Well, and when we think of risk, we often don't think it. We often don't think about jumping out of planes. So, I mean, that's just I think an unusual request. But the other thing that I noticed you talk about in your book is winning and losing, and how sometimes losing can be winning. And it sounds like that's kind of an example of when you lost, but you gained something in terms of trust.
That's absolutely right. And that's it. When we are battling so strong, for what we think. And it might be, it could be as simple as what someone should be eating versus what they're actually eating. And we're just fighting this battle. We realize if we can figure out the big picture, and in this case, it's helping someone to reach the end of their life. We're all on that journey, just at different places. And if I can help them reach it with dignity, then we both win. And by me constantly saying no or trying to protect him. Now, granted, like when ladders came in, I hid the ladders. Like I wasn't going to let him do something if I could help it that would hurt him. But if I could support him in something he wanted to do, as fearful as I might be, then I wanted to do that going forward. And it helped our relationship change dramatically from that and just my different approach. So when winning is losing is when we're just fighting so hard to hold on for control. We're fighting to win because we know we're right. But, being right isn't everything.
I want to come back to something you said early on, Theresa. You mentioned that your dad kind of hinted at there'd been a fire and downplayed it. And later you found out it was more serious. What had happened?
He lit candles every evening. So he'd light this tray full of candles and he fell asleep. And it was actually on the dresser, and it burned through the tray and then into the dresser, onto the whatever was on top of the dresser. And so when he woke up, the condo was filled with smoke. He ran into the bathroom. He had the wherewithal to soak a towel and throw it over the candles. So the fire, he shared it like it wasn't a big deal, but as he started to talk about his feet were cut and he had to have them looked at by a doctor, that the insurance company, the people who'd come in and inspected said he shouldn't be staying in the condo because of the smoke damage. Then I found out the dollar amount that the insurance company was going to pay. I knew it was a lot more significant than what he shared. And it could have been, it could have been tragic. Absolutely. So that, and this happens. My brother lives an hour and a half away, but he wasn't able to get over there and see and assess and kind of lay eyes and let me know. So that happens with family members. I love my brother. He did the best he could, all of this, but that told me I needed to be closer.
Stay with us a minute. We're going to do a little business at our end and come right back to you. We're talking with Theresa Wilbanks, Sustainable Caregiving Strategies, and she's written a book about it, Navigating the Caregiving River, and her newest book, Self-Caregiving Strategies, coming out soon. She does a podcast as well. Carol Zernail is here. I'm Ron Aaron. We appreciate you joining us today on the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. Well, thank you so much for listening to Caregiver SOS On Air. We're delighted to have you with us. We come to you every week with a discussion of an issue, a problem, some accomplishments involved in caregiving with more than 60 million caregivers across this country, but most thinking they are the Lone Rangers. We try to bring you the latest information and help that can make that job easier and more manageable. Caregiver SOS On Air takes a look at trends across this country. We provide tips on how to be a better caregiver, and most importantly, where you can go for help. On Caregiver SOS On Air, we try to give you what you need to make that caregiving manageable and to provide you with the help that can make your life easier. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernail and I are delighted to co-host this program, and we're thrilled you've joined us on the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air podcasts available everywhere, brought to you by WellMed Charitable Foundation.
Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again. Hello, friend. Hello, friend. Really good to see you once again.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today on the award-winning Caregiver SOS On Air. I'm Ron Aaron. Carol Zernail, our co-host, is with us, and Theresa Wilbanks, author of a book dealing with exactly what we're talking about, Sustainable Caregiving Strategies. And I want to pick up something that Carol said earlier, Theresa, and that is that word sustainable isn't often attached to caregiving. What is it you mean by that?
Well, when I was on that journey, sort of at the beginning and just helping out, everything felt good. But then all of a sudden I felt like I was drowning, and that feeling of drowning, I'm not going to survive this. I realized this is not sustainable. My health, I had gained 30 pounds. Dad and I were not getting along at all. I was very concerned about our relationship because we had had a great relationship up to that point. And I did not want these last years to just destroy what we had. And so this it felt like it was not a sustainable situation. And that's where, I tried to figure out how to make it sustainable. How can I survive this? How can I improve my health, our relationship, prioritize my well-being while caring for dad? It seemed impossible, but I felt like it just had to happen. So that's where sustainable caregiving came from.
Well, so you have 12 strategies that are going to be coming out in your new book. Can you share a couple of those that people might not have, top of mind?
Sure. I think the first one that I realized was I needed to set boundaries. And the reason it was a foreign concept for me, because while at work I set boundaries in my personal life, I never really had to. I didn't understand necessarily what they were, how to use them, how to set them, how to have those conversations. That was hard. And I'm not talking about boundaries with dad. I mean limits for myself. How much is too much help, whether it's physical help with dad, where I could get hurt if I tried to help him do something physically, or emotional. My worries were out of control, and I could set a boundary around a worry. And it might be a paid caregiver boundary with a paid caregiver where I didn't get so invested in their personal life that it was detracting from their helping dad, maybe a neighbor. So I just realized that when I felt anger, it was possibly a boundary being crossed, one that had not been set, one needed to be reinforced. I had to learn how to have those those conversations and communicate like with compassion, because it felt selfish. There's just so much wrapped up in that. So that was probably the first one. And then the self-care piece, things I had done in the past just felt like it was just living life. And now all of a sudden I wasn't doing any of those things. And I realized those were self-care. So it might have been running, or, just going for a walk, just taking some time to myself, going to the gym. I didn't label that as self-care before, but then I realized that absolutely is what helps me feel whole and connected with myself. And I could run through them, but forgiveness turned out to be one, because I mentioned my brother earlier, and I could tell it was going to be, it would be easy to be angry with him, be frustrated, to have conversations that would mean we wouldn't have a great relationship after dad was gone. I didn't want that. I had to forgive him. I had to understand, just accept that some folks can do certain things and others can't. And there's a lot of people who distance from us when I started caring for dad. So forgiveness, forgive myself. I made mistakes. That was one of the strategies. Journaling helped me process everything. Venting, talking to someone who, could listen without judgment. That it was not easy to find someone, always who understands what you're going through, and where you feel heard and validated and not judged for your feelings. So those are some of the strategies that really helped.
Now, when you mentioned your brother, your anger toward him was because he wasn't pitching in, he wasn't offering to help?
Yes, absolutely. I just felt like, he was close, he could help more. And for example, after having been there for several holidays to be with dad, my husband and I went to be with my husband's parents. And my brother came over, and my dad's like, well, let's make sure that he doesn't have to do any work and that the food's all ready. And so, this deep breath, and yep, we're going to do that. But again, no, it's okay. I had to really dig deep and say, this is how their relationship stays strong. This is how I can preserve the relationship between my brother and I. But it would have been easy to be extremely angry about that and feel like I'm the one with all the burden, and my brother has no idea what this is like. And he's helping. But I will say he didn't interfere either. I have to be very grateful for the fact that he wasn't trying to second guess the decisions that we were making. And he did express gratitude. Yeah.
Did you ever talk to him about it?
No, I just don't feel like, I don't know that he is self-aware enough to even know that he wasn't participating at the level that I would have he had been, I don't feel like it would have been productive. I feel like dealing it with on my own forgiving and processing why I maybe feel this way helped me to understand a little bit why he might have felt the way he felt. He maybe couldn't deal with it, seeing dad decline like that. That was how I handled that.
Well, I think the other example that you've given is, the idea of forgiveness, the idea of letting go of things that aren't working. Instead of spending time and energy being mad, trying to fix, letting that go, acceptance is something that's very difficult to learn. And the sooner we as caregivers learn it, it can help relieve us. Both of those things, forgiveness and acceptance can
No,
help alleviate a lot of problems.
You're right. I mean, when I realized that resentment is just feeling the same thing over and over, expecting a different outcome, and that outcome is not going to come, then it's me who's hurting at this point. And so accepting, and then obstacles. We used to get I was maddened by the obstacles in the VA system, or, just all the obstacles are everywhere. And then when I realized, okay, this feeling I'm having, the frustration, the anger, isn't helping us solve them. And often when we do solve them, it's a solution that helps us change our entire situation. Maybe we connect with someone who then is a person who helps going forward in other areas. So yes, you're right. That acceptance, when I was able to apply it to different areas, it transformed the entire experience. I felt empowered and not controlled by the chaos of caregiving.
Now that leads into something that you've been saying. Caregiving is both an act of love and an extreme sport, demanding endurance, boundaries, and support. You have covered all of that, and that's a real challenge for every caregiver.
It is. And some folks say that, caregiving isn't a sprint. It's like a marathon. Well, I would say it's more than a marathon. A marathon we train for. It has a beginning and an end. We know the route. We have people cheering us on. We get a medal at the end. That is not the caregiving experience. So it's a lot. And it does take training and practice, maintenance. It's a self-care.
So did you find help other places? You talked about your brother, you talked about moving. Were you able to bring in some additional help to support you, that maybe you started doing it all yourself at first and you transitioned as you went along?
Yep, absolutely. I realized that I had managed in my career. I was not looking at this as a position where I would manage. I was doing everything. And so when I realized I could be a leader and manage the care team, I went to the local area agency on aging, and I would recommend anybody get in touch with their local area agency on aging. There's one in every county, and they were able to come in and assess and let us know how they could help. And then we had a home care agency. We actually did have folks come in for a few hours a week. Now, I will say Dad resisted that with all of his strength. And he was such a kind, gentle person, but not when someone came to help him. But eventually we found the right persons, people who just had shared his passions for like painting and who liked to talk, because he liked to talk and listen. He was curious about people. And when we found the right people, he looked forward to them coming. He would ask, when is Lisa coming next? And I would almost get jealous because he was looking forward to them coming and helping. And he didn't want my help. So
and you're there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So it was perfect, though. It turned out to be a great situation, but it did take me accepting that I needed help, and then helping Dad through that process as well. And when we did that, I used the time intentionally. If someone was there, I would try to really make it a point to go do the things that would help me feel whole again, just a few self-care things. And it's just maybe going for a walk and trying to, tune out the worries.
Tell us a little more about your dad.
So Dad was a World War II vet. He served in Okinawa and Iwo Jima when he was 21. And then he came out, GI Bill, became a teacher. So he taught at a community college chemistry and physics. And he picked up painting when he was 40. So that's when he started landscape painting. And he was, up until the day before he passed, he was painting. I call it a surrealist face. He didn't see the detail, macular degeneration and glaucoma, but he painted. And he just had a passion for life and a curiosity about people. So up until, he passed at 99, and he was active and engaged. That was during the pandemic, though. So I would say his 98th birthday, we had he was going great. I can't remember exactly when we had the caregivers stop coming, and my husband and I took over everything, and we had our little bubble where we kept him safe. But he was a character. And he was awesome. Great example for me. And like I said, he taught me lessons all the way through up to when he passed, because all these lessons I learned about caregiving essentially came from him.
You miss him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that he had to experience both the left brain and the right brain, that analytical, and then move over to that creative, and that you were able to help give him that space. So, if people want to find out more about you, Theresa, or about in the books that you've written, where do we find your books? Where do we find you?
Yeah, you can, Navigating the Caregiver River, A Journey to Sustainable Caregiving, is available on Amazon. You can go to sustainablecaregiving.com, and you'll see all the blog posts and stories about Dad. Essentially, everything is there as well. And I can, there is a 12 Sustainable Caregiving Strategies PDF that can be downloaded from the website. So that's something that it doesn't have the anecdotes. The book has the stories about Dad, like when I walked in and he's on a 6-foot ladder trying to Velcro a painting to the ceiling. Those stories are in the book.
That's perfect. We're going to have to stop you here. We are flat out of time. SustainableCaregiving.com. And Theresa Wilbanks, thank you so much for sharing your stories and sharing your dad with us. I'm Ron Aaron. Thank you to Carol Zernail. We'll talk with you soon on Caregiver SOS On Air. The executive producer for Caregiver SOS On Air is Daniel Calderon. The producer is Sharice Pendleton. And the associate producer is Catherine Oglesby. We'll see you next week on Caregiver SOS On Air.
You've been listening to Caregiver SOS On Air, an exclusive presentation of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. We welcome emails with suggestions and comments on this program at radio@wellmed.net. Join co-hosts Carol Zernail and Ron Aaron next week for more on caregiving, improving the health and well-being of caregivers and their care recipients everywhere. For more on caregiving and podcasts of our programs, visit caregiversos.org.